Hi, everyone. We are kicking off a new series today called The Forces of Human Nature, where we explore the forces that drive and block sustainable behaviors. Today's episode includes an introduction to the series and will also cover the first human nature force of barriers. It's amazing how things come full circle in life. Many moons ago, at the dinner table with my parents, I was expressing frustration with something I was trying to achieve. I don't remember the exact context, but I assume it was related to career advancement aspirations during my early days in advertising. My stepmom, a social worker who often delivered trainings on professional goal setting, drew a picture of a soccer goal on a notepad with a stick figure player trying to advance toward the goal. Working against the player was a series of arrows that was preventing the individual from achieving their goal. To counter those headwinds, a powerful set of drivers would be needed to propel the player to the goal, or to the finish line if you're up for mixing sports metaphors. Little did I know she was introducing me to the force field analysis, which was developed by psychologist Kurt Lewin in 1951 as an organizational change management model. But this visual memory of players, forces, and goals came flooding back to me years later when I was creating the Making Moves course. It felt so simple, yet so incredibly insightful and useful. It felt so relevant to the sustainability and conservation behaviors I was working on. It felt like the perfect tool to organize our thoughts around barriers and motivators so that we can design audience-centered action plans. I researched the origin of the diagram, how it has been used since the 50s, and created an adaptation for the course. I recommend checking out the written version of this post so that you can view the diagram yourself. But let me share a brief explanation of the force field analysis and what it is. So when a person attempts to do something new or different, they face numerous factors that may prevent them from following through. These were the arrows that were working against the soccer player. I call the factors that prevent action deterrents. But on the flip side, there are also numerous factors that can help motivate this person to overcome challenges and stay dedicated to achieving the behavior change goal. I call these motivators, as you are well aware. Motivators and deterrents can be further divided into external forces and internal forces. External forces exist in the social environment around the audience, over which they typically have little to no control over. In contrast, internal forces are more psychological and emotional factors related to motivation and change. Now, overall, in this diagram and this analysis, our goal is to increase the internal and external motivators and decrease internal and external deterrents, obviously making it easier to achieve the goal. So this blog series will explore all four forces, external, internal, deterrents, and motivators, to understand what drives and blocks sustainable behaviors. Today we'll start with external deterrents, which we can think of as behavior roadblocks. Again, external deterrents prevent the audience from taking action or adopting a behavior, and they are typically outside the audience's direct control. So coming back to the soccer example that my stepmom shared with me, external forces would make it impossible for the player to reach the goal. The player wants to achieve the goal and is trying to get there, meaning the motivation exists, but something is making it extremely challenging or impossible to complete the task. In many programs, these factors are referred to as barriers. And there are real-world examples of sustainability programs promoting behaviors that contain external deterrents, even if we hate to admit it. For example, we ask people to drive less, but there are no public transportation options for them. We ask people to compost, but their buildings don't have the infrastructure for it. We ask people not to litter, but there are no garbage cans anywhere nearby. We ask people to install solar panels, but they can't afford them or their homeowners association won't allow them to install them. We ask people to adopt different livelihoods, but there are no other forms of work available to them, or they don't have the skills needed for those jobs. Now, I always recommend starting the force field analysis process with external deterrents because they can be deal breakers with the potential to undermine a project's success. Because if your audience cannot access the required equipment, tools, skills, or resources needed to perform the desired behavior, then no amount of marketing, communication, or outreach about doing the behavior will help them overcome those barriers. Use the force, Luke. Use the force field. Jokes aside, I do recommend putting some of this into practice right away. Like the second you finish listening to this, examine whether your current behavior change program contains barriers that prevent the audience from taking action. Take a minute to brainstorm a list of all the potential external forces your audience may encounter in any part of the process towards achieving the behavior change goal. But don't fret if you do find some external forces in your program. Knowing which barriers are preventing action helps us address them. You can consider taking one of the following steps to reduce or remove any barriers you found to create a smoother path to action. You can certainly remove the barrier entirely so it no longer impacts the audience. Potentially, you can reduce or lower the barrier enough so it doesn't impose as strong of a force on the audience. You can identify a way for the audience to avoid the barrier altogether by using a workaround or taking a different path to achieve the goal. You could also explore having the program provide those missing ingredients like the tools or resources or the skills that the audience needs to overcome the barrier on their own. So if you just listened through that list and thought, yikes, I don't think we can do that. I don't think we have the money for it, the resources, the capacity, and so on, then consider one of these alternatives. You can pivot by prioritizing a plan to remove or reduce the barriers before asking the audience to adopt the desired behavior. So this means the change in the project is, let's get this barrier down. In the meantime, while you're working on that barrier, you can promote initial engagement activities with the audience or ask them to help advocate for removing the barriers if that would help your work get that barrier down. So certainly consider if that's relevant and appropriate to do for your audience and your context. You can also pick a more viable behavior for the audience to adopt if there are just too many barriers with the initial one you're working on. The more realistic behavior can be promoted in place of the original one, so a complete swap out, or it can be kind of a barrier-free step on the behavior journey you focus on while that bigger barrier issue is being addressed. Now I want to bring all of this back to the previous series on the behavior change trio. Actions, routines, and habits may encounter various types and levels of barriers. The external forces preventing your audience from joining a webinar, which is an action, will differ from the barriers they face when implementing composting at the restaurant, which is a behavior. Behavioral journeys that articulate each step in the change process can make it less overwhelming for us to identify when and where those external forces may exist for our audience. These level of details also help uncover any unforeseen barriers that have caused the audience and maybe even the project's trajectory to stall so that they can be addressed and reworked. External forces are just the beginning. We're at the tip of the iceberg here, folks. Next, we're going to take a peek inside the minds of our audience to explore the internal deterrents that are preventing action. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to identify motivators and deterrents for your audience, join the Making Moves course later this year. We get into all the details during the 8-week course so you walk away with a clear, structured plan for motivating audiences to protect the planet. You can find more information about the course on my site and even sign up for the waiting list at brooktully.com. All right, take care, y'all. See you later.